In the heart of San Antonio, Texas, nestled among the sprawling suburbs where manicured lawns met quiet cul-de-sacs, lay the community of Cypress Hill Commons. It was a place where the sun baked the earth into submission, where families sought refuge from the chaos of the city, and where rules weren't just suggestions. They were the invisible threads holding the fabric of daily life together. On this particular day, a day that would unfold like a tightly wound spring, releasing all at once, Tobias Greenfield arrived at his new home, his gray Jeep crunching over the driveway gravel as he pulled in. At 44 years old, Tobias was a detective with the San Antonio Police Department, a man whose life had been a relentless pursuit of justice through shadowed alleys and high-stakes operations. He had poured every last drop of his savings, his sweat from countless overtime shifts, and his patience honed from years of diffusing volatile situations into this house. It was supposed to be his sanctuary, a place where he could finally exhale, park his Jeep without worry, and watch the world spin on without demanding his intervention. The Jeep itself was no ordinary vehicle. It was equipped with subtle modifications, reinforced undercarriage for rough pursuits, a discreet radio system tucked beneath the console for task force communications, and compartments holding sensitive files and surveillance gear. To the untrained eye, it looked like any rugged four-door SUV, but to Tobias, it was an extension of his duty. Mobile command center that had seen him through drug busts, undercover stings, and late-night stakeouts. As he stepped out, stretching his limbs after the drive from the precinct, he secured the bright yellow steering wheel lock with a satisfying click. It wasn't paranoia, it was protocol, a safeguard against theft in a world where criminals didn't respect boundaries. The neighborhood shimmered under the relentless Texas sun, the air thick with the scent of freshly cut grass and blooming crepe myrtles. Houses lined the street in uniform rows, their exteriors painted in approved shades of beige and soft gray, as dictated by the Homeowners Association. Tobias hauled the first box from the Jeep's back seat, labeled kitchenware, balancing it on his hip as he made his way to the front door. He had chosen Cypress Hill Commons for its promise of tranquility. No sirens blaring at odd hours, no neighbors prying into his erratic schedule. But tranquility, he would soon learn, came at a price in this enclave. From across the street, a figure emerged, moving with purposeful strides. Marjorie Klein, a retiree in her late 60s, was the self-appointed guardian of Cypress Hill Commons. To outsiders, she might appear as a harmless woman with too much time on her hands, clad in khaki pants, a crisp white blouse, and a visor shielding her sharp eyes from the glare. But to the residents, she was the iron-fisted enforcer of the HOA, her clipboard a symbol of unchallenged authority. Marjorie had lived in the community for over 2 decades, rising through the ranks of the board until she became vice president. She saw violations everywhere, a lawn an inch too long, curtains in a forbidden hue, or a bicycle left unattended on a porch. In her mind, these weren't minor infractions. They were assaults on property values, threats to the pristine image she had cultivated. Her obsession with control stemmed from a deep-seated need to impose order on a world that had once felt chaotic to her. Widowed young, she had channeled her grief into micromanaging her surroundings. As Tobias set the box down to fish for his keys, Marjorie approached, her clipboard clutched like a badge of office. "Excuse me," she said, her voice carrying the clipped tone of someone accustomed to being obeyed. "You're the new resident, I presume, Tobias Greenfield." Tobias turned, offering a polite nod. "That's me, just moving in today." Sweat beaded on his forehead from the heat, but he kept his demeanor calm, a skill perfected from years of interrogations and negotiations. Marjorie's eyes scanned the driveway, lingering on the Jeep. "We try to maintain a certain standard here in Cypress Hill Commons. Most residents park their vehicles inside the garage. It keeps the streets looking neat and orderly." Tobias wiped his brow with the back of his hand. "I'll keep that in mind for now. It's easier to unload out here." He picked up the box again, intending to continue inside, but Marjorie didn't budge. She pointed at the steering wheel lock visible through the windshield. "And that device, it's quite conspicuous, makes the vehicle look like it's in some sort of trouble. We don't have issues with theft here. This is a safe community." Tobias set the box down once more, meeting her gaze squarely. "Its security helps prevent theft. I've had enough experiences on the job to know it's necessary." Marjorie pursed her lips, jotting something on her clipboard. "Well, around here, things don't get stolen. If you'll excuse me, I have rounds to make." She turned on her heel, but not before giving the Jeep one last disapproving glance. Tobias watched her go, shaking his head slightly. He hadn't come here for conflict. His days were filled with enough of that at work. But the encounter left a subtle tension in the air, like the first ripple in a still pond. As he continued unloading boxes, neighbors began to stir. Victor Hensley, a middle-aged accountant living next door, leaned over the shared fence while pretending to inspect his rose bushes. "New here, welcome to the neighborhood. I'm Victor." Tobias extended a hand over the fence. "Tobias, nice to meet you." Victor glanced toward Marjorie's retreating figure. "You've already met Marjorie, I see. She's enthusiastic about the rules." "Enthusiastic is one word for it," Tobias replied with a wry smile. Victor chuckled nervously. "She's been running the HOA like her personal fiefdom for years. Careful with that Jeep of yours. She once had a guy's work van-towed for aesthetic violations. Thinks she's saving the property values." Tobias raised an eyebrow. "For real? That's over the top." "Yeah, well, she believes she's the neighborhood's protector. Just a heads up." Victor waved and retreated inside, leaving Tobias to ponder the warning. As the day progressed, Tobias settled into his new home, arranging furniture and unpacking essentials. The house was modest, a two-story with a small backyard, but it felt like a victory after years of cramped apartments near the precinct. He took a break on his porch, sipping water and watching the street. Children played basketball in a driveway down the block, their laughter echoing. It was the kind of normalcy he craved. But Marjorie's presence lingered. He caught glimpses of her walking the block, clipboard in hand, stopping to measure grass heights or note mailbox conditions. By midday, as Tobias grilled burgers in his backyard for a quick lunch, Victor appeared at the fence again. "Smells good, settling in okay." Tobias flipped a patty. "So far, so good, though your HOA enforcer seems to have taken an interest." Victor leaned in, lowering his voice. "She's got a special eye on newcomers, thinks they disrupt the order, and that lock on your Jeep, to her, it's like waving a red flag." Tobias nodded, his detective instincts kicking in. He had dealt with control freaks before, suspects who manipulated situations to their advantage. "I'm not here to cause trouble, just want to live quietly. Good luck with that," Victor said. "She's relentless." The conversation was interrupted by Gloria Ramirez, a vibrant woman in her 50s from 2 houses down, who waved from her yard. "New neighbor, welcome. I'm Gloria. If you need anything, let me know." Tobias waved back. "Thanks, Gloria." She approached the fence, joining Victor. "I saw Marjorie giving you the 3rd degree earlier. Don't let her get to you. She's harmless mostly. Just likes to feel important. Harmless." Victor snorted. "Tell that to the family she fined for having holiday lights up a day too long." Gloria rolled her eyes. "Okay, maybe not harmless, but she's all bark." Tobias listened, piecing together the neighborhood dynamics. It was clear Marjorie held sway, her influence woven into the daily lives of residents. As they chatted, sharing stories of past HOA dramas, Tobias felt a sense of camaraderie forming. But beneath it, he sensed the undercurrent of fear. People complied not out of agreement, but to avoid becoming her next target. As the afternoon wore on, Tobias decided to take a jog around the block to clear his head. The sun dipped lower, casting long shadows across the lawns. He laced up his sneakers and set out, his pace steady, breathing in the warm air. Marjorie was out again, pruning roses in her front yard. Her eyes followed him as he passed, her expression one of calculated scrutiny. When he returned, sweat, soaked and invigorated, he noticed her blinds twitch. It was subtle but unmistakable. She was watching. Inside, Tobias showered and changed, preparing for what he hoped would be a quiet evening. But as he stepped out to his driveway to grab another box from the Jeep, Marjorie reappeared, this time with a rolled-up HOA newsletter in hand. "Mr. Greenfield," she called, marching across the street, "we need to discuss your parking situation more seriously." Tobias sighed inwardly but kept his cool. "Ms. Klein, is it? I've just moved in. Give me time to settle." She crossed her arms. "Your garage is empty, yet you insist on leaving that vehicle outside. It violates Section 4B of our guidelines, and that locket's an eyesore, implying this is a high-crime area, which it most certainly is not." Tobias set the box down, his voice firm but polite. "With all due respect, it's my property. I'll secure it as I see fit. I've been in law enforcement for 20 years. I know a thing or two about safety." Marjorie's eyes narrowed. "Law enforcement, that's no excuse for disregarding community standards. If you can't comply, perhaps this isn't the right place for you." The exchange drew attention. Gloria paused, her plant watering, ears perked. A child's face appeared in a window across the street before vanishing. Victor stepped onto his porch. Marjorie maybe cut the guy some slack. He's new. Marjorie glared at him. "This doesn't concern you, Victor. It concerns all of us when you're patrolling like a sheriff." Victor retorted. The standoff hung heavy in the air. Marjorie scribbled on her clipboard, muttering about fines. Tobias picked up his box and headed inside, refusing to escalate. But the seed of conflict had been planted, and in Cypress Hill Commons, such seeds grew fast under Marjorie's watchful eye. As evening approached, Tobias reflected on the day. He had unpacked most of his belongings, the house beginning to feel like home. Sitting on his porch with a cold drink, he watched the sunset paint the sky in hues of orange and pink. Neighbors passed by, some offering waves, others averting their eyes. The tension with Marjorie lingered, but Tobias was no stranger to adversity. He had faced down armed suspects. A clipboard-wielding retiree was hardly a threat. Yet, as the stars emerged, Marjorie's obsession festered. From her living room, she peered through the blinds at the Jeep, its lock gleaming under the streetlight. To her, it wasn't just a car. It was a symbol of defiance, a stain on her perfect domain. She paced her floor, her mind racing with plans. Warnings wouldn't suffice. She needed action. In her garage, she eyed the bolt cutters she had purchased earlier that day on a whim during a hardware store run. This community needs protection, she muttered to herself, justifying the brewing storm. Unbeknownst to Tobias, the day was far from over. The confrontation had only begun, and by night's end, lines would be crossed, secrets revealed, and the neighborhood forever changed. Tobias retired to bed, unaware that Marjorie's pride would soon propel her into irrevocable territory, turning a simple move-in day into a cascade of chaos. The day in Cypress Hill Commons continued to unfold with an intensity that belied its serene facade. Tobias Greenfield, having retired to his new home after the earlier skirmish with Marjorie Klein, found himself unable to fully unwind. The encounter lingered in his mind like a persistent itch. He paced his living room, arranging books on shelves and hanging pictures, trying to shake off the unease. His years as a detective had taught him to read people, and Marjorie's demeanor screamed control freak. Someone who wouldn't back down easily. But he pushed the thought aside, focusing on making the house his own. Outside, the neighborhood hummed with subtle activity. Children retreated indoors as dusk approached, their games giving way to family dinners. Lights flickered on in windows, casting warm glows onto the streets. Victor Hensley, still unsettled by the afternoon standoff, decided to check on Tobias. He knocked on the door, holding a six-pack of beer as a peace offering. "Thought you might need this after today," Victor said when Tobias answered. Tobias grinned. "Appreciate it. Come in." They sat in the kitchen, cracking open cans. Victor shared more about the community, the annual block parties, the quiet winters, and Marjorie's reign of terror. "She's been vice president for years. No one challenges her because she's got the bylaws memorized like scripture, but she's alienated half the neighborhood." Tobias took a sip. "Sounds like she needs a hobby." Victor laughed. "Her hobby is us. Watch out, she's probably already drafting a violation notice for your Jeep." Across the street, Marjorie was indeed scheming. Seated at her dining table, surrounded by stacks of HOA documents, she drafted a notice on her computer. Notice of violation, vehicle improperly stored in driveway, steering wheel lock not in accordance with community standards, immediate action required. She printed it, her hands trembling slightly with righteous indignation. "This will show him," she whispered, but as she taped it to Tobias's front door under the cover of twilight, her mind raced further. Warnings weren't enough, the Jeep had to go. Tobias discovered the notice shortly after Victor left. He crumpled it in his fist, anger flaring. Storming across the street, he pounded on Marjorie's door. She answered, smug. "Can I help you?" "You left this on my door," Tobias said, holding up the paper. "That's correct. Comply or face fines." Tobias stepped closer. "That Jeep is tied to my work. Mess with it, and you're messing with more than me." Marjorie slammed the door. Inside, her resolve hardened. She grabbed her phone, dialing a tow company she had used before for violations. "I have an abandoned vehicle to report," she lied. As night deepened, Marjorie slipped on gloves and retrieved the bolt cutters from her garage. The street was quiet, most residents asleep or watching TV. She approached the Jeep, heart pounding. Clamp, press, snap. The lock broke. She opened the door, ignoring the official trappings inside, and signaled the tow truck, lurking around the corner. Rick Daly, the driver, hooked up the Jeep. Neighbors stirred. Gloria gasped from her porch. Victor muttered in disbelief. "Marjorie, you're going too far." "It's for the community," she snapped. The truck rumbled away, Jeep in tow. Marjorie dusted her hands, triumphant. Tobias, alerted by a neighbor's call, returned to an empty driveway. Fury boiled. He confronted Marjorie. "Where's my Jeep?" "Towed. You've been warned. That's criminal tampering. That vehicle's law enforcement property." She scoffed. "Excuses." Tobias walked away, calling his colleagues. Squad cars arrived, lights flashing. Detectives questioned Marjorie. "You interfered with an investigation." Her face paled, but she stood firm. Neighbors watched, the neighborhood fracturing. The night in Cypress Hill Commons pressed on, the events of the day culminating in a whirlwind of revelations and consequences. Tobias Greenfield stood in his driveway, the flashing lights of police vehicles painting the scene in stark reds and blues. His colleagues from the task force had arrived swiftly, their unmarked cars blending with the squad units. Detective Carla Mendoza approached, frustration etched on her face. "Tobias, what happened?" "She cut the lock, towed the Jeep. It's at the impound." Carla cursed. "That's obstruction. We'll get it back." They drove to the impound, Tobias explaining en route. The clerk released the Jeep after threats of federal involvement. Back home, Tobias confronted Marjorie again, neighbors gathering. "You tampered with task force equipment." For the first time, doubt flickered in her eyes. Investigators canvassed doors. Gloria and Victor gave statements. She overstepped. They said. Marjorie, cornered in her home, called board members, but support waned. An emergency HOA meeting convened in the clubhouse, residents packing in. Howard Pike suspended her. "You've brought shame on us." News leaked, reporters arriving. Marjorie watched from her window, isolated. The DA reviewed charges. She faced fines, service. By dawn's approach, the neighborhood shifted. Freer, lighter, Tobias reflected on his porch. Pride's cost, respect's value. Marjorie, behind blinds, faced her downfall. The story ended not in victory, but lessons learned, all within the span of that fateful day.
If you liked this story, please like, subscribe, and share it with others so they can learn something from it too.